So, when you open up your favorite messaging app, right, whether it's Signal or WhatsApp or whatever platform you use that has that little padlock icon.
Right, the one that says end-to-end encrypted.
Exactly. You get that banner, and for most of us, that little cryptographic guarantee, it gives you this profound sense of security.
Yeah, you feel like you're in a vault.
You really do.
Yeah.
You operate under this assumption that whatever you type to your friend or your coworker, it's mathematically shielded from basically everyone on the planet except the person you're sending it to.
And usually that assumption is correct. The math is incredibly solid.
But that is exactly why we're doing this deep dive today. We're looking at a highly sophisticated threat landscape that completely, entirely bypasses that mathematical certainty.
It just sidesteps it completely.
Yeah, we've got this detailed report that recently came out through a KULT Patreon post, and it highlights this really urgent alert from Dutch intelligence agencies.
And the mission for us today is to unpack exactly how these supposedly, unhackable channels are actively being compromised right now. And we're talking about targets at the highest levels of government.
It's wild, because the central paradox here, and this is what makes this report so critical for you listening to understand, is that the Dutch agencies are warning about a massive global cyber campaign.
Yeah, a campaign they are attributing to Russian-backed hackers.
Right. Targeting Signal and WhatsApp accounts of very high-profile people. But the crazy part is the encryption itself. It's fine.
That's the scariest thing about this. The cryptographic integrity is completely intact. The attackers are not breaking the end-to-end encryption. The underlying math is working exactly like it's supposed to.
But the accounts are still getting entirely compromised.
Exactly, because if the math is holding up, it means the vulnerability has to be somewhere else.
Right. So we really need to look at the mechanics of this operation. The primary revelation in this source is this massive pivot. They aren't attacking the cryptography anymore. They are focusing entirely on endpoint compromise.
Through social engineering.
Yes. Hacking the human, basically. Bypassing the whole transit encryption by targeting the actual person holding the phone.
And the first specific vector that the intelligence report details is, honestly, it's brilliantly simple. They deploy these highly sophisticated fake chatbots.
Oh, this part blew my mind.
Right. So the attackers impersonate an official Signal support or WhatsApp support account, but they do it directly inside the app's interface.
So it looks completely legit.
Totally legit. They manufacture this urgent security alert, or they say there's an account verification issue, and they simply ask the user for their security verification codes, or their PIN.
They just ask for it.
They literally just ask.
And it works because of the psychology of it, right? I mean,
Yeah,
you get an in-app message, and it has the official logos, and they're using that very specific kind of sterile corporate tone that support teams use.
Your brain just accepts it.
Yeah, your operational security training just goes right out the window because you're panicking. They create this false urgency, telling you, your account is going to be suspended in 5 minutes or a third party is trying to log in.
And you just want to resolve it instantly.
Exactly. And by the time you hand over that 6-digit code, you have effectively authorized a hostile takeover of your own device.
Because that end-to-end encryption, it only protects the data as it's traveling through the pipes, so to speak. It offers absolutely zero protection when the authorized user willingly hands over the keys to a new device.
Right. They leverage our conditioned trust in those automated systems.
Yeah.
We assume if it's inside the secure app, it must be safe.
Which is a huge mistake. And that actually brings us to the second tactic outlined in the report, which is honestly even more insidious.
The linked devices exploit.
Yes. Exploiting the linked devices feature. So most of these apps, they let you connect a secondary piece of hardware, like your desktop computer or an iPad, to your primary phone account.
Right, it's a super convenient feature. I use it all the time to type on my laptop instead of my phone.
We all do. But the attackers are weaponizing that convenience. They initiate a remote linking process, and then they use that same social engineering we just talked about to trick the target into authenticating the connection.
Usually pretending it's a security check.
Yeah.
It's basically like someone coming up to your house, and instead of picking the lock, they just convince you to hand them a perfectly copied spare key.
That's a perfect analogy, because once that authentication happens, the attacker has successfully linked their own external device to the victim's primary account.
And it's so quiet.
It is entirely silent, and it's persistent. They aren't just getting a one-time snapshot of your old messages. They are establishing a permanent, unauthorized presence right there in your communication environment.
So they could just sit there and silently monitor everything. All the incoming messages, outgoing messages, real-time group chat dynamic.
All of it. And technically, the data is still end-to-end encrypted. But the attacker's device is now recognized by the math as a legitimate endpoint.
Wow. So the victim is just walking around, operating under this illusion of total privacy, while basically broadcasting every single keystroke to a hostile actor.
Exactly. And it's incredibly hard for the end user to even notice this is happening, which is why the Dutch intelligence agencies put out specific indicators of compromise in their alert.
Yeah, let's go over those, because if you're listening and you use these apps, you need to know what the red flags are. You have to actively look for the digital artifacts these attackers leave behind.
Right. The agencies warn that you should monitor your contact list. If you suddenly see unexplained duplicate contacts appearing, that's a major red flag.
And another big one is phone numbers suddenly showing up inside your active chats, labeled as deleted accounts.
Yes. Those are the subtle interface anomalies that happen when an unauthorized linked device is messing with the account infrastructure, or when the attackers are cycling through temporary burner numbers to make that first contact.
So you really have to be paying close attention. And that's paramount when you look at who is actually caught in the crosshairs of this campaign right now.
Because this is a highly targeted operation.
Very targeted. The primary victims here are not just average consumers. We are talking about government officials, military personnel, civil servants, and prominent journalists.
And this isn't just theoretical anymore.
No, not at all. The Dutch General Intelligence and Security Service, the AIVD, and the Military Intelligence and Security Service, the MIVD, they've confirmed that these threat actors have already successfully claimed victims among Dutch government employees.
And the agencies assess that highly sensitive information has likely already been exfiltrated.
Which means we really need to look at the broader geopolitical context driving this. Why the Netherlands? Based on the MIVD's 2024 report in our source material, the Netherlands is facing a really disproportionate level of focus from these threat actors.
Now, before we get into the why of that, we should be very clear here. We are unpacking this threat matrix purely through the lens of the Dutch intelligence assessments.
Yes, exactly. We're just conveying their analysis. We're reporting what the MIVD documented regarding the suspected involvement and motivations of these Russian-backed campaigns.
Right. We are not taking a stance or endorsing any political viewpoints on the geopolitical conflict itself. We're just looking at the intelligence report as written.
Exactly. So, keeping that in mind, the MIVD outlines 3 specific factors that make the Netherlands such a high-value target right now.
The first factor is the Netherlands' active and vocal support for Ukraine. According to the report, that naturally places them in the crosshairs of Russian cyber operations that are trying to disrupt or monitor allied logistics.
Right. And then the second factor is the heavy concentration of major tech companies operating inside Dutch borders.
Which makes their digital infrastructure a huge target for espionage and IP theft.
Definitely. But the third factor, and this is probably the most critical one when we talk about this specific messaging app campaign, is that the Netherlands hosts crucial international institutions.
Most notably, the International Criminal Court, the ICC.
Right. And when you stop and consider the sheer volume of sensitive data that must be flowing through the mobile phones of people associated with the ICC, the value of this linked device exploit becomes terrifyingly obvious.
We are talking about diplomats, military liaisons, legal investigators, people handling highly classified international policy and evidence.
It's literally a gold mine. If a hostile actor successfully links a silent device to the Signal account of an ICC investigator, they get unredacted, real-time access to global legal and diplomatic back channels.
They can anticipate legal maneuvers, identify confidential informants, monitor internal deliberations, and they do it all without ever breaking the cryptography.
It's staggering. And the realization that this level of interception is happening has triggered a massive, massive shift in institutional security policy.
A total paradigm shift, because the intelligence community is having to fundamentally reevaluate the line between platform security and user operational security.
Yeah, AIVD Director General Simone Smit articulated this really well in the report.
Yeah.
She emphasized that the platforms themselves, Signal and WhatsApp, they haven't suffered a systemic breach. The core infrastructure is still secure.
The vulnerability exists entirely at the level of the individual user account, the human being.
Right. And that distinction between the system being secure and the user being vulnerable led to a really severe mandate from the head of the MIVD, Vice Admiral Peter Riesink.
This was the part of the report that really signaled a sea change.
It really did. He issued this widespread warning stating that regardless of the end-to-end encryption protocols on these apps, platforms like Signal and WhatsApp should absolutely not be used for transmitting classified, confidential, or sensitive information.
Which is a staggering policy directive when you think about it. The head of a national military intelligence agency is publicly declaring that the mathematical certainty of the encryption is completely irrelevant if the endpoint authentication relies on human interaction.
Exactly. It forces a complete rewrite of how government bodies and corporations handle security. For years, they've leaned so heavily on these commercial secure messaging apps.
They just assumed, well, the math is unbreakable, so the channel is safe for sensitive operations.
But the MIVD's directive just dismantles that assumption completely. It acknowledges that human beings, people who manage PIN codes, who navigate deceptive in-app chats, who authenticate secondary devices, are an unpatchable vulnerability.
The tool itself might be structurally sound, perfectly engineered, but the human interface makes it totally unsuitable for state secrets.
So how are the tech companies responding to this? Because the source material does cover the reaction from the corporate side, and you can really see the friction here between Silicon Valley's approach to security and the intelligence community's reality.
There's a massive divide in philosophy here. WhatsApp provided a statement to Reuters, and they basically reiterated the fundamental rule of endpoint security. They said users must never share their 6-digit passcode with anyone, period, no matter the context.
Right. And they also mentioned they are actively developing new protections against these specific types of social engineering threats.
While Signal, on the other hand, didn't immediately respond to requests for comment regarding the Dutch intelligence report.
But that WhatsApp response really illustrates the dynamic. The platform developers are essentially arguing, hey, our infrastructure is perfectly secure as long as the end user operates it flawlessly.
Right. They provide the lock, but they put the entire burden of keeping the key safe on the human holding the phone.
Whereas the intelligence agencies are now operating from a zero-trust perspective when it comes to human behavior.
They've concluded that users, even highly trained, top-level government officials, just cannot be expected to maintain perfect operational security against psychologically manipulative attacks 100% of the time.
It's impossible. We're human. We get tired. We get stressed, we panic.
Exactly. And therefore, their conclusion is that relying on a human in the loop makes the whole system compromised by default.
Which brings this whole deep dive directly back to you, the listener. Because even if you aren't managing confidential case files for the International Criminal Court,
Which I assume most of our listeners aren't.
probably not. But even so, the mechanics of this threat fundamentally alter how all of us need to interact with supposedly secure digital spaces. You can't just see an encryption label or a little padlock icon and treat it like a magical security blanket anymore.
No, you really can't. The ultimate firewall protecting your text messages isn't written into the app's code. It's your own baseline skepticism. It's your personal security hygiene.
So what does that active hygiene actually look like day to day?
It requires a continuous active audit of your digital perimeter. If an in-app support chatbot messages you and requests a PIN code or tries to initiate a verification process, your immediate response has to be a hard stop.
Do not engage.
Do not engage. You have to recognize that the secure environment of the app itself is being weaponized against you.
And what about the linked devices? Because that's the silent killer here.
You have to routinely audit those. It's a convenience, but it requires maintenance. You need to proactively go into your account settings, review the list of authenticated hardware, and immediately revoke access to any unrecognized or legacy devices you aren't using anymore.
Because the attackers are literally banking on your complacency. They're counting on the fact that you'll trust the interface, that you'll panic under pressure, and that you'll never bother to check your hardware audits.
Exactly. So to wrap up what we've covered today, we have mapped out a really sophisticated, deeply concerning evolution in global cyber espionage.
We looked at how Russian-backed threat actors are completely sidestepping the formidable cryptography of platforms like Signal and WhatsApp, and are breaking the math or exploiting the human at the endpoint.
Through those spoofed in-app support bots and the silent weaponization of the linked devices feature, and they're using it to infiltrate the communications of journalists, military personnel, and government officials.
We also analyzed the MIVD's assessment of why the Netherlands has become a primary target for this intelligence gathering, looking at their tech infrastructure, their support for Ukraine, and their hosting of the ICC.
And, of course, we explored that massive paradigm shift in institutional security, highlighted by that Dutch military intelligence directive that basically banned the use of these commercial apps for classified info.
The platforms say their encryption is uncompromised, but the intel community has determined that human vulnerability makes these tools fundamentally unsafe for highly sensitive operations.
It is worth noting, before we finish, that the Dutch authorities have mobilized a widespread cybersecurity advisory, and they are actively on the ground assisting affected users to secure their accounts and mitigate the fallout.
That is good to know. But the overriding takeaway from this entire intelligence report is just wild to think about. The most advanced cryptographic algorithms in the world, stuff that would take supercomputers millions of years to crack it, is all entirely negated the exact second a user hands over a 6-digit verification code.
The math holds, but the human fails.
Always. Which, honestly, leaves us with a really critical, almost philosophical question to end on today regarding the future of secure communications.
Yeah, this is something to really mull over. If this intelligence assessment is concluding that end-to-end encrypted apps are fundamentally unsuitable for classified data, simply because they rely on human users to manage PINs and authenticate devices,
Right.
we have to ask,
Yeah.
is true impenetrable digital privacy currently just an illusion? As long as a human being is required to authenticate a device, doesn't the system possess a fatal flaw?
Yeah, it is the big question. Will the future of ultra-secure, state-level communication eventually require us to remove the human element from the verification process entirely?
And what would that even look like? Can we build an authentication framework that completely bypasses human psychology? Or will a human holding the phone perpetually remain the ultimate vulnerability in any security architecture?
It's a profound structural question.
Yeah.
And definitely something to keep in mind the next time you authenticate a new device or get one of those urgent security alerts popping up on your screen.
Stay skeptical.
Always. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the evolving nature of digital surveillance. Keep questioning your digital environments. Maintain your security hygiene, and we will catch you next time.